Welcome back to Season 3 of ASD Market Week's podcast, Let's Talk a Little Shop. With your host, me, Emily Lewis. We're going to tackle the hard subjects. So buckle up and get ready for Season 3. We're going to have a lot of fun. All right, welcome back to another episode of ASD Market Week's Let's Talk a Little Shop. So today I have an amazing guest, one that I admire and I also work with, so I've enjoyed working with her, Miss Tiffany Hardin, who is the founder and CEO of Gild Creative Group. Gild Creative Group is an award-winning full-service influencer marketing agency where your tagline reads, "We build meaningful connections to amplify big ideas." So, Tiffany, first of all, we're really excited to have you.
Yay.
And second of all, what is an influencer marketing firm, group, agency anyway?
Oh, I love this. Thanks for having me. Really excited to be in partnership with you. And, honestly, being in partnership with you and also getting to know you through connection. So that my tagline is literally how we met.
Yeah,
true. So, my entire career has been built around relationships. And, I'm a woman of a certain age at this point, which is still very young, but
yes.
Don't get it twisted. But, the term influencer marketing is fairly new. The creator economy is fairly new, but I've been working with talent and working in this business for, almost 20 years, quite frankly. And, when I say we, make meaningful connections to amplify big ideas, it's because, working in media and advertising, there's always an idea. It's always coming from somewhere, but ideas don't take root until somebody is connected to them, and typically with influencer marketing, quite literally, it's how can I work with someone who has an audience and is excited about something to share this message. And this is what we do all the time in our regular lives. I have these earrings on right now and they're so cute. They say my name. They say Tiffany all the way around.
Oh, they're adorable. I love those.
I love them too. Instagram got me. It was an Instagram ad buy.
Always. Instagram always gets me.
It stays like, oops, snatch your coins. But I went to a conference and everyone's like, where'd you get your earrings? Where'd you get your earrings? And I actually didn't remember the name of the company, but if I was like, oh my gosh, this company is so amazing, you got to get, that is influencer marketing. That is word of mouth reformed, word of mouth taken to the next level. And so that is what influencer marketing is. Now, what an influencer marketing agency does, it is rooted in advertising. It is rooted in ideas. So how can we as a creative shop work with a company to say, okay, here's your product that you're launching. Here's the activity that you want to see happen. And here are people in the world that are adjacent to you or closely associated with this that have a big voice. And their big voice is really apropos to this activity that we want to see happen. So why don't we work with them so that we can have a little bit of share some cultural equity, some exchange to get this thing done. So whether that is ticket sales, whether that's some type of product, whether that is quite literally an idea or a message, like there are people we can work with to help us propagate that. And so my agency works with brands to support not only what is the strategy around that, like why are we working with these communities, but also what are we going to do or ask them to do, and then go into the talent discovery, like who are the right people, and then doing all of the like talent procurement, negotiation, the management of the activity that we want them to do. So usually that can be like UGC, or if we're actually producing something, that could be placing these influencers in a produced piece of content, or showing up somewhere, at an event or what have you, or even just like seeding out the if it's a product or anything like that.
Okay. So, do you think that anyone can be an influencer, or do you think that there are special skills and talents that make an influencer a good one, or maybe not so good?
Hmm. Um, I do, so it depends on what what that talent wants, right? So I think yes, anyone can be an influencer. Here's the asterisk on that.
Yep. Yep.
Um, because like your mother is an influencer,
Yeah.
on you. Anyone who has influence on you is an influencer, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you're talking about folks who want sustainable careers in influencer marketing, then they need to be able to have an audience. They have to be able to, um, if they are getting revenue from brands, they have to be able to, you know, understand how to work with brands, understand how to
Yeah.
negotiate their rates, and they have to have content that is valuable, like whatever
Yeah.
you're putting out into the world, that has to be valuable to your audience
Yeah.
most of all, because
Yeah.
that is actually the sort of supply demand that makes you compelling to a brand to connect with for a potential brand partnership deal. So
Yeah.
I do
You
believe
have to
anyone
deliver.
yeah, and deliver. Like,
Yeah.
is it good to work with you? Like,
Yes.
is it a good process? That's the other piece too. For folks that have been doing this for a long time, they know they have repeat customers or repeat brands that they work with, because not only are they an authority in the space, but
Mhm.
also they like working with them,
Yeah.
and that's any business, anywhere, anytime. Why do we always go to FedEx Kinko's? One, because it's the only one there, but also
Because no
because
one wants to go to USPS. Let's
no
just be
one wants
real.
to do that. And like it's
Yeah.
easy, you know what to expect, you know what's
Yeah.
going on. So I think if you're an influencer and a content creator, you can, actually develop systems for yourself so that you can be a great partner to the brands you work with, but
Okay.
also a good partner to the audiences that you're serving. Because whether or not there's a brand involved, you have to be able to deliver to your audience whatever it is that you love and what you want and what you think is going to be meaningful for them. You're still in a space of service, to that
Yeah.
audience.
Yeah.
When I was young, I was that kid that was
Yeah.
writing songs and, singing for my parents and thinking I was going to, you know, be the next, greatest singer and songwriter, and I had to go through these steps to figure out like I actually don't want to be a commercial singer-songwriter.
There you
Turns out
go. There
I don't
you
want
go.
to do that. I love singing. I love being creative, but also I had to go, but I went through this like process to allow myself to land at that
Yeah.
space. And
Yeah.
it's actually funny because, kind of backing up into my career, you know, I grew up in a few different places. I was born in Germany. My dad was in the
Oh,
army,
wow. Okay.
and when he was and he still is in corporate America, but um, we lived in two places. My adolescence really was in two places for the most part. I lived other spaces, but Texas and Wisconsin, and we
Two
lived in
totally different places, by the
the
way.
bottom and the top. Like it was just like it's funny because because I was in Wisconsin, and that was like sort of the second stop. Being in North Dallas, it was like I had exposure to everything, and this was the 90s. So like, my friend told me, we were living in Michael Irvin's Dallas, this is when Dallas
Yeah.
Cowboys was really on it,
Yeah. Yeah.
and my high school had like the like premium stadium. The Cowboys would practice there, like we were
Wow.
called Cowboys, all of this. It felt like Clueless, like the movie, like the environment of Clueless. That's what it felt like.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then moved to Wisconsin, and it was like, Jerry Garcia, Grateful Dead, Fish. It was jam band like vibration. Had no idea about that culture at all. I felt like
Right.
I moved into like Roseanne, like just like the environment of Roseanne. That's where I lived.
Yeah.
And it's funny because it's true and everybody else knows that too. But what I learned was one, I truly, missed having access to Black culture, which was so
Mhm.
readily available to me in Texas. But it
Mhm.
also allowed me to be exposed to being in the Midwest, had me be exposed to Chicago. And so
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
when I was on my search for what am I going to do with the rest of my life, that when
Yeah.
you're 17, 18, you're like, oh my God, I have to like figure it out.
When you figure out the answer to that question, please let me know
Right.
because, you know, we're still all asking every
We're
day,
all
right?
awesome still.
Yeah.
And uh, I went to visit this school and they had a music business program.
Okay.
And that's, when I learned, oh my gosh, like at the time I thought like, oh, maybe I'll be a vocal performance major. But then I realized actually I don't want to be a commercial singer songwriter. And they ended up having a talent management program. And I was
Okay.
like, now that sounds interesting because, and this is like before this was in a lot of schools. And so I was still in high school and there was this high school band and I was like, can I manage you guys? And they're like, oh, okay.
Oh,
They were like,
wow. So
they were like,
that
we
early?
don't really know what that means, but do what you want to do.
I mean, that's really impressive, though. I just want to stop you for 2 minutes because that early, you were in high school and you were already honing in on the path within a certain industry. And then you were brave enough to just go out there and say, let me manage you.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
How
want
did
to
that
try
work
this
out?
on. Yeah, it worked out great. I got them on the radio, did their press kit. We got them their demo. Band's name was Scarlet. Like
Oh,
it
okay.
was fun.
Scarlet.
It was
Little
great. Okay,
plug for you.
We got to go to Milwaukee to play a show, which was like a big
Okay.
deal. But like it was. I remember being in the process of this, and I thought to myself, okay, this is going to be my case study for. I
Hmm.
didn't have that language at the time. But that's what it was. It's like this
Yeah.
is going to be my case study for what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. It's like I want to do this. I love working with talent. I love solving problems. I love solving creative problems, and I ended up going to school for that. And it was so
Mhm.
interesting because when that thing happens where you are kind of on a path where like the aha moment happens, you're like, oh, I like that. I want to do that. I just kept going on that path and stayed committed to that. But it was
Yeah.
like, what is this going to give me? Because this industry is so, you have to be up under someone. It's so niche that like, there wasn't a Spotify. Look, I'm dating myself. There wasn't a Spotify, there wasn't an Apple Music, there wasn't you're the talent relations person at a
Yeah.
major company. There
Yeah.
none of that. So it's
Yeah.
like you had to like be in it to win it,
Yeah.
back in the day.
Yeah.
And I was able to grow my skill set under talent managers that were really impressive. Like
Yeah.
one of them, had managed Kanye West at the time. The
Mm.
other, this is how I moved to New York City, but like she manages Missy Elliott, who just got in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
And now how did you meet these people? Because these are big names that you're
Yeah,
dropping. Are you still in Wisconsin? Are you
no, so in college, my
okay,
first like internship job, but like more
okay,
internship, was with a guy named John Monopoly, who
okay,
was the president of Good Music, but he was also from Chicago. And
okay,
so
okay,
he would split his time between Chicago and New York. And I
okay.
was his Chicago assistant
Mm,
while I was still in college. And
okay.
when I was getting out of school, like just I was in my senior year, about to be in my senior year. And I told him, I was like, I really want to graduate with a job. I really want to, figure out, my place. And he had worked for Violator, which is where Mona Scott Young had worked at
Mhm.
the time. And we were doing an event at school, and I was like, I really want Mona to be there because it was very rare to have a Black woman talent manager and
Mhm.
at
Mhm.
that level. And
Yeah.
I really wanted her to come to the school. And so we arranged that. And he also let her know that I was looking for a job. And,
Wow.
um, she needed a new assistant. And so literally, like, that was kind of like an interview process at the same time. And so when we met, she came to Chicago, we met, we had a good vibe. And then I came out to New York to just still connect with her and her crew.
Mhm.
And it
Mhm.
was still a good vibe. And she offered me a job. And
Wow.
In the middle of my senior year, I had all my credits, all my stuff together. But in the middle of my senior year, I ended up moving to New York City at 21. Didn't know nothing about nothing about
Mhm.
nothing. Paid, like 25 grand a year.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, you thought you had landed the jackpot at that point.
Oh,
You're like, "I'm in New York, life is great."
my mom was
Yep,
like, "What did you say?" Like
yep,
she was
yep,
like, she called it young, dumb, and desperate. Like she's just like, "Girl,
yep.
do you?" But this is young, dumb, and desperate. And I was like, "I am."
Yeah, yeah, and there's something glorious about those years. Amazingly
Nothing,
glorious.
nothing glorious about those years. But this is the other thing that it did. I would always walk by this Starbucks. So mind you, this is giving at that point. We're in 2007, and
Okay.
so I would walk by this Starbucks on my way to the office on 25th Street. And there were these people in Starbucks with like computers and they were working and meeting. And I was like, well, why do they get to sit in there and work? And I
Mhm.
have to go to this office. I was like,
Yeah.
to me, in my mind, I was like, they're free and I'm not. That's what it felt
Mm.
like. And it like did something in me where I was like, well, I'm gonna own my time. Like right now, I don't own it. I don't own my time
Mhm.
right now, but I will. Like I was like, I'm
Yeah,
gonna own my time because I want to be able to be in Starbucks at whatever day, part time of the day I want to be in there,
yeah,
meet people, do work, whatever I'm supposed to do,
yeah.
and own my time. And so that started the seed of entrepreneurship. Even though I
Mm.
watched my mom do that, but that started the seed of entrepreneurship. And then as my career progressed and I started to work, when I went to advertising, it was with another CEO who he owned advertising agencies, still does, but he had a background in the music business, and so
Okay.
he was very well known in that space. So translation, Steve Stout owns translation. That was my next gig, and
Okay.
that was where I learned about culture
Mhm.
marketing and advertising and brands. Because before I
Okay.
was very much in the music business and in this bubble of the music business and talent management, and then
Mhm.
working for Stout, I was able to really get this grasp on what it means to create strategy, what it means to be in the advertising business, the expectations around that. And
Mhm.
that for me was, especially during that time, an anchor to how I wanted to, kind of combine these elements and then like continue my career. It was really the seeds
Yeah.
of influencer marketing because it was taking talent, creating strategy around it with for brands and saying, hey, you can come play over here with this project or whatever. And that was it,
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
was really helpful to be able to see how what was happening in culture take root and be able to borrow from like corporate environments and vice versa to
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
make something interesting happen.
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, you were very much ahead of your time. If you were, 21, 22, seeing someone working out of a Starbucks and understanding that time is absolutely the most valuable commodity that we have and we're never going to get more of. So that is far above your years. It took me well into my 30s to realize that.
Mhm, mhm.
Maybe even still realizing that some days. But I see a consistent thread throughout your story. You are very bold. You're
Mhm.
very hungry in a good way, but bold. Like you are asking questions. You're asking people to do things and mentor and help and bring talent, onto your college campus at a young age that most people would be very either shy or they wouldn't have the confidence. They wouldn't be able to do. And I imagine that that plays into the fact that A, you're a female founder, B, you're a Black female founder, and C, successful as hell in your own right with your agencies. So,
Mhm.
have you always been that way? Have you always been bold? Have you always had that confidence, or is it something that you've had to fake it till you make it or build over time?
All of the above.
Yes.
I
Okay.
think also like when you're
Mm.
thank you for those compliments. I appreciate that. I think when you're young, like you don't know better. Like you don't know to
Mhm.
have like tact or feel like a
Yeah,
filter, you know?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
literally when I was young, um, there's two stories I want to tell you. Like I was walking, I was like really young, I was like elementary school. Um, and I was walking down the sidewalk and there was this boy that was like in my way and I asked him to move and he was like, no. And I was like, please? And then he's like, no. And I was like, okay, well, in my mind, the options were, well, you're gonna move or I'm going to move you. Like wasn't the only so I pushed him.
You're like, "I asked, and I asked nicely." So,
I was like, so I pushed him. I moved him out the way and I kept walking.
yeah.
And the reason why I even like I know that story is one because I kind of remember it, but also my parents happened to be at the school at that time.
Oh,
They were like, they were there for my sister, and
yeah.
they were like, let's talk about your other daughter. And
Yeah.
they're like, what? What did she do? And then also when I was younger, I guess I drew on the wall. A lot of kids draw on the wall, but
Yeah.
I was drawing on the wall, and I have an older sister, and
Mhm.
I told my dad was like, Tiffany, did you draw on the wall? And I was like, no, daddy, no, not me,
Yeah, nope.
And I was like, Courtney must have did it,
Yeah, of course.
And, my dad's a smart guy, he was like, well, your sister's this tall, you're this tall, the writing's here. Like, I think you did right.
Yeah. He's like, let me teach you a little something about strategy here."
Yeah, right. If you go live,
Um,
do it good if you're going to live because this
yeah,
is
"If you're
not
gonna be
good.
this short, you better lift that hand up high and
Yes,
draw high and have some strategy to blame it on your sister." Yeah,
exactly. And so
yeah.
he asked me, he must have wore me out. He asked me again, and I said, he's like, Tiffany, why did you write on the wall? And I
Yeah.
said, oh, Dad, just because the paper wasn't big enough. And he just kind of looked at
Ah,
he just kind of looked at me like, okay, like,
I
well, that's why she wrote on the wall.
I
That's
mean,
why.
from a parent's perspective, I would probably be like, "That's a really good argument. Like, how do I even punish you? Because that makes sense."
That makes sense. And he was like, you know what? Excuse me. He was like, we're gonna have to paint it over anyway when we move. So he wasn't mad. He was just like, why'd you
Yeah,
do it?
yeah, yeah.
And it what it what with that story, what it also taught me was like I always thought big, I always dreamed big. And, you know, when it came to building a company, I always knew I wanted to own my time, right?
Mhm,
And so how do you do that? You
mhm.
do that by being an entrepreneur.
Yeah,
And I knew that I wanted to work with creatives, right? That's what high school taught me. Like,
okay,
I'm going to work with creatives. I'm going to do that my whole life. I knew that for certain. I was
okay.
like, yeah, I want to own my time. I want to work with creatives. I want to use like the business part of my brain. Like
Yeah,
what I had like the idea of what I always wanted to do. And
mhm,
then the world came and I was like, well, it's called
mhm,
this. You're gonna
mhm.
take a little bit of that, you're gonna take a little bit of that, and then it's gonna be this. And if you would have told me when I was 18, hey Tiffany, you're gonna, run your own agency in the creator economy, aka influencer marketing, I'm like, I don't know what that is.
Yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah.
it wasn't a thing then.
What yeah, wasn't a thing.
So to your point, like I was always willing to one learn and be a
Mm,
student of culture. And um, I loved education, and so being willing to learn and being a student of culture, it also allowed me to be able to listen to others,
mhm,
you know.
mhm,
And I think
mhm.
sometimes, you know, especially as we get older in this space, people are like, well, this is how it's always been done. It's like, well, maybe there's another idea. Like, I don't think I'm the only person that is capable of good ideas. So
Yeah, yeah.
maybe somebody has something else that could be interesting to integrate into this. And what I have through my experience is able to match that so we can like create something cool. And
Mhm.
being a black woman who owns a company, the good thing about that is that I was able to see that in the past, like between my mother owning her company as a software analyst.
Okay.
She was the first entrepreneur I ever knew. Between seeing that and then also seeing Mona Scott Young, who was technically my first boss that paid me. you
There
know,
you go.
between those two, I was like, okay, these are examples of women who also had their own families. They are successful, like
Yeah.
they're good people. Like I enjoyed learning from,
Yeah.
and I knew it was possible. So I think for me, it was like, I know my success is possible. And by the way, I know it's inevitable. So I never had this
Mhm.
feeling of like, what if I don't know? Like you have
Yeah.
those moments in business because that's just human. But
Yeah.
I just always knew like my success is inevitable because God told me so. Look,
Okay.
all yeah, or it's
Yeah.
just, but like,
Yeah.
and I feel like if I'm able to be a model, then
Mhm.
who knows who is coming after and saying like, you know what, she's a good person. She didn't step on necks. She was
Yeah.
able to, achieve her success. She was able to put ideas into the world, and I can too.
Yeah.
And I've
Yeah.
done my job as
Yeah.
being here on this planet. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
Yeah.
very
No, for
important.
sure. What do you what do you think is the biggest misconception about being an entrepreneur or a business owner?
That is sexy. It ain't sexy. Um,
I
it's
love
not
that.
sexy.
It is hard work, people.
Oh my gosh. James Brown has this song, and every time I hear it, I'm like, I feel like I say it with a little too much like emphasis, but he says, I pay the cost to be the boss.
Yes, yes. Well, it cracks me up every time I hear anyone saying, I'm so excited to start my own thing. I'm going to set my own schedule. I'm going to wake up late. I'm going to have so much more time. And I just laugh. I'm just like, you have no idea what you're
Mm,
about to step into. You're not going to have 1 ounce of free time because you're always on. Because guess what? You're the boss now.
you're the boss. And I think one of the other misconceptions too is that um and I will tell you, I'll be honest, I did this to my old boss, where you think the title means you have all the answers, you
Oh,
know?
yeah. Yeah.
And you can have a vision of what you
Yeah.
want and where you're going,
Hmm. Hmm.
but relaxing the like strong opinion loosely held. It's like I'm
Oh,
going
I like that.
that way, but like how that flows and goes, like you have to be open with it. And I
Yeah.
will tell you, even environment wise, like I was in New York City for 12 years
Hmm.
and I was like, that's my home. And God
Hmm.
was like, you're moving to Nashville. And I'm like,
Yes.
says
You're like,
who?
excuse me, what?
We have questions,
Yes, yes.
you know?
I ob I object to that. Can we talk about that a little bit?
And I learned like, sometimes the environment is just as important as,
Yeah,
what you're doing. And this was an environment that allowed me to really grow the business. So I think another misconception is that it looks a certain way. We now live in a
yeah,
culture where, I've always done remote for like the many, many years, but like
yeah.
we now are in a culture, it's like you can be anywhere and do anything. I have friends running whole like festivals from Mexico right now. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
like,
yeah,
and in my mind's eye, I'm like, you're just on the beach hanging out. But I'm like, no, they're probably in an office somewhere too. Like
yeah, yeah,
you
exactly.
can be anywhere. And I think
Yeah,
when people say the future of work also includes like releasing your mind from expectations of what work looks like,
correct.
And I think that's a big misconception. I think the other
Yeah,
misconception is, I don't know if it's a misconception as much as it's a like, don't play yourself. You can't do it alone.
yes,
You
I
can't
agree
do
with
it.
that wholeheartedly, and I push back on this idea of women being able to have it all, and I get a lot of furrowed brows when, you're talking, especially in a room full of powerful women or feminists, and I am the first to say I am all for feminism. I
Mhm.
am I am here for it. Hence the reason my, women are leaders in the back over
Yes.
here and my RBG photo. But
Yes.
it's just really tough for me to digest this idea of anyone can have it all at one time. You can't. It's not realistic. You can't be a an outstanding mom, an outstanding CEO of a company, an outstanding, wife or dater or partner. You can't be the best friend in the world. Like, no one has that much time. You have to pick your spots, and life is all about seasons and cycles.
Yep.
And yes, in the period of your life, you can quote unquote have it all. But there's just this myth of, oh yeah, if you don't have it all at one time and it doesn't look great from the outside, then you're doing something wrong. And that's why we're all tired. Like, we are tired. Women are tired. We're tired of trying to have it all.
Let me tell you something. Tired, and the body keeps the score. So if you're trying to keep up the hype and you're like, I'm here, I'm there, your body will do it for you. I don't know if you ever had this moment, but where it's like your body said, oh, you don't want to lay down? I'll lay you down.
Oh yeah. Those 3 to 4 month stints where, those of us who are, self-proclaimed workaholics, we work and we work and we work and we go. And then guess what? We get so sick, that we can't even get out of bed for a week. And that is just like, hello, you have needed rest. You cannot do it all. Say no to some things.
Say no to some things. And I think there's power in that because, if I'm being really honest with you, like I have a friend who's in the hospital right now. And it's the life will catch up to your body. Like, and if you're not paying attention to the signals your body's giving you, like I'm anxious, like if you're saying, like, if your body's saying you're anxious, like you need to breathe, go for a walk, go outside, get some nature, like take a break, whatever, your body gives you these signals, and you have to, especially as hard workers, especially as entrepreneurs, like being able to take heed can save you bills. Hospital bills. Take heed, and your body, like, I think will give you medicine too. Like, and I think if we paid attention to that, like we would save ourselves a lot of time and effort. But you said something interesting about, this work-life balance business, and, it's not about work life. To me, it's like, it's about the harmony. Like, even when I'm in a busy season, is there harmony in my home? Is there harmony in my relationships? I can see myself, like right now, dating is so fun right now. It's not. That was being facetious, but like
it is not
fun. Well, because also when you're perceived as like, oh, you own your own company, so you must be the boss mentality. Like, I'm a boss chick. Like, I would never say that about myself, right? But like, there's that like stigma out in the world, and men will say something like, well, when are you going to have time for me? And it's like, there's always time for what you make time for, But I think that there's an opportunity to have harmony when people understand and accept you for who you are, what you give, and the seasons of your life, just like any other time. I lost my mom in 2020, and that was a season in my life where, if I'm being honest, I don't remember that much.
I
don't remember that much. And there was text messages from friends where I would think of somebody and I'll go to text them, and their last message for me was like, sorry about your mom, and da-da-da. And I'm like texting them something ridiculous and funny and silly, and I'm like, oh, I didn't see that before, but thank you. And also, in that season, I was not necessarily someone who had the capacity for other people. Like, I couldn't be a pillar of strength and wisdom and counsel for other folks like I probably would be in any other time. And I needed that. So I leaned on, other folks. And so I think the people in your life that have, requirements of you or expectations of you, if they're really loving on you, then they will also be respectful of the seasons of your life, no matter what's happening, what's going on. And, I have friendships that have shifted over the years, and for some for the better, where it's fallen away, needing to be that needed to be done, like with all the love and care,
Yeah.
but like it needed to be done. That season is done. And I have
Yeah.
friendships where their life shifted and
Yeah.
being able to be there in this new era, I have a great friend who I remember when she became a mother, like we would have late night, Zoom catch ups, when she's in the midnight feeding era,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
she would be sending all this stuff. And I'm like, what you doing up?
Yeah.
And she's like, it's that time of the night,
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we were able to maintain connection because I was willing also to grow with her and to grow
Yes.
in the spaces where she needed support, and then also in the times where she could give, versus being upset that she couldn't be there for me at a time when, like, during at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It's like, I don't got time for
Yeah.
you, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
she's married, she has a family. So
Yeah.
I think harmony is really where it's about, and what it's about as we continue to get older and have families, have more complex
Yeah.
identities
Yeah.
as we get older, versus when we were in our 20s and it's like, oh, all I have to do is go to work, have a good time, and go to sleep.
Exactly. Exactly. But I love how you position it, because I highly dislike that word balance. I just think it's unrealistic. But harmony, if you
Mhm.
replace, instead of work-life balance, work-life harmony, I think that makes sense, because harmony looks different for everybody else.
Mhm.
Balance is a straight line.
Yep. Yep.
Balance is making
Well,
sure that both ends are even, but
mhm.
harmony is waves and ebbs and flows, and that's
Yeah,
life. Like,
that's
that's
right.
life.
Yeah, that's real.
You can be in a work mode for 1 year, and then you can be in a relationship mode for the next year or a month or a week or whatever. Every day looks very different as to what harmony looks like. So I love that. So we're going to start doing that, replacing balance with harmony, because
Yeah,
yeah.
that's a good idea.
Yes. Okay. So you mentioned something in your conversation. We used to have this culture, and obviously you stay very close to culture of, the earrings and the necklaces and everything that was like boss babe, boss bitch, like, and
Mhm.
and, and I did notice on your website that you do use the word hustle. And that's also one of those words that, it used to be like hustle hard, and everything's about the hustle and the grind culture. Okay, so you do use the word hustle. So
I use it in
through,
connection. Yes, I
walk
use it
us
in
through what
connection.
that means. Yeah.
So, to that point, I use it in connection with another word. There's another word that
Okay.
precedes it,
Yeah.
and it's conscious.
Okay.
So, I am a conscious hustler, and it took me a long time, because I used to hear this a lot in my like upbringing. It's like, oh, you're such a hustler. Oh, you're a little, and I used to hate that word. I used to hate the
Yeah.
word hustler.
Yeah.
And I was
Okay.
like, I'm not that. And then I was like, you know what? Actually, yes, I am. Like, I am someone who is resourceful. I'm someone who gets it done. I'm someone who wants to like uh, perform and perform well and use it as it's an excellence barometer. And
Mhm.
but I had a problem with the word too. And
Okay.
the problem is that it was missing something. It was missing the care. It was missing the embodiment that I had around that, which was being conscious. Like, I'm
Okay.
not out here just doing things to do things. Like, having a conscious hustle is about understanding who I am and understanding how I want to, be mindful in my hustle. So my my desire to kind of put this out into the world has so much more to do around finding other people who perform, or high performers, that want to add the consciousness on top of that high
Okay.
performance or that hustle, so that they're working towards not their demise and like grinding themselves into the ground, but they're conscious of when it's time to stop. They're conscious of when, you know, maybe especially if they're in a leadership position, when they're like, you know what, as a leader, as
Mhm.
a conscious leader, as a conscious hustler, my team needs rest.
Yes.
Like, because there are too many people that are being encouraged to hustle because the leadership that they're under is hustling.
Got
And
it.
and
Got it.
it's too much. It's like this trickle down effect. Now, one of the things that I really, really can appreciate about my upbringing, especially in my career, has
Mhm.
been the detail oriented piece of it, the desire for excellence, not
Mhm.
perfectionism, not perfectionism,
Mhm.
excellence.
Mhm.
And
Okay.
that there's a difference between those two because perfectionism will have you up late at night, like "Ugh," getting your mind crazy,
Yes.
whereas excellence is doing the details right, operating at a space where you know there is clarity, there's consistency, there is
Mhm.
um, a level of care on everything that's happening, whatever it is
Mhm.
that you're doing for yourself, whatever your work is. And that level of excellence is something that can be repeated. Perfectionism can't be repeated, you know?
Got it. Got it. Yeah.
So I use hustle, but I use it with something in front of it, with the word conscious in front of it to
Yep.
denote you can be excellent and you can create excellence at a high level when you're also extremely mindful of how you are, how you
Mhm.
behave, what
Mhm.
your self expectations are or self agreements are.
Yeah.
And that is something that when you're in your workplace, you can that becomes a model.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's
No,
what
and
I
I wanted to ask you that question because I wanted you to explain how you set that up on your website. And I think that I love the words that you're using to substitute maybe for some of these words that we have that culture has been using that
Mhm.
do have a lot of toxicity in them. It's so funny because I'm a recovering perfectionist. I say it all the time. And I have a tattoo that says perfection or progress over perfection because perfectionism is one of the most toxic traits. It really is. You're never going to live up to it. And, you're always going to be a little bit stuck in your ways and not open to learning and changing. But I love the term excellent.
Everybody has their come up story.
Yeah.
And what I really want is like, I don't want, that that environment to, especially in your come up story, let's say you work in a very high performing, like high achievement environment where
Hmm.
perfectionism is that is part of the nature. Um, you can conflate excellence and perfectionism.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of like undoing that we have to do
Yeah.
because I've definitely, I don't know if anybody else has been like this, but it's like when you get those calls and you see the number on your phone and you're like anxiety, it's like immediate anxiety, when
Yes.
you are, there are those, we all have those moments where you feel like you're not enough
Yes.
and you're not perfect enough. And what is unfortunate about that is that when it starts as young as it does start,
Mm.
you just keep growing up with it.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, you're, in your 50s or whatever, and you're like, oh, I don't know about this. And you're always constantly self-doubting. And it's like, what you do is enough. Like
Yeah.
what you
Yeah.
have to offer is enough. And you have to find that within yourself, which is the conscious,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I, I love that.
Why do you think that women suffer from imposter syndrome
Mhm.
more than maybe our male counterparts?
Honestly, there are some wounds that don't have anything to do with work. It's
Yeah.
like wounds that need to be healed when it comes to worthiness
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
deservedness and our social conditioning. That has been a part of our social conditioning. Like
Yeah.
you are good enough as long as you're good enough for somebody else. You
Mm.
know, you're good enough to the extent that that friend group likes you, that man likes you, that boss gave you the promotion, that da, da, da. And then unless somebody gives you this invitation, it's
Mhm.
like we feel like, okay, maybe I'm not maybe it's not for me. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe versus
Yeah.
I am good enough. And that experience of maybe not getting X, Y, or Z actually has nothing to do with me,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know? And part of it is like we think too much about our lack
Mhm.
without thinking about our greatness, you know?
Yeah.
And I think I think if I'm being really honest, I don't think men think about themselves
Mm.
in these ways.
Mm.
So it's less about like men thinking like, oh, I'm not, I think a man can see another dude and be like, oh yeah, his muscles are bigger than mine,
Yeah.
and not think anything of it. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
they don't have the extra of like, well, he must get all the girls and like he must be so successful in his career and like
Yeah.
we attach
Yeah.
all this other stuff and create
Yeah.
a whole
Yeah.
narrative and then
Yes.
run that thing into the ground. And it's like,
Yes.
or
We
the
Yeah.
girl just got the promotion and like
Yeah.
ask her
Yeah.
what she did. Did she do her deck a different way? Did she like what did she do?
Yeah.
You don't have
Yeah.
the fear around that.
Yeah.
Because I think confidence moves differently. Like
Yeah.
pure confidence is, being able to say like I know who I am, I feel good about who I am, and I'm able to look at somebody else and be like, you're completely whole and you're good and you're God's child. And if you have something and you've achieved something that I'm looking to achieve and
Mhm.
I'm curious about your process. Not
Yeah.
because I take something from you, but because
Yeah.
I genuinely believe that you may know something I don't know. And it's like, look, we're quick to go to Google and get a question asked. But
Yeah.
each other, we're like, oh, I don't know. She's gonna think this, she's gonna think that, you know?
That's a really good point. We are such a culture that picks our phone up in 2 seconds and asks Google a question
Mhm.
to get an answer, yet we won't go to a peer, especially women. Sometimes now I know there's a stereotype of men not wanting to ask for directions and all that
Yeah.
good stuff. But especially women to women in a career business sense.
Mhm.
And why do you think that is? Why?
Sure scared. We don't wanna look like we don't know, you
Mm,
know? Um, I think it goes back to fears,
yeah,
like where our fears are in that. Like I think that it also has a lot to do with the trust as well. You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
um, I will be honest with you, like most of the women that in terms of success in my business, like has been because there was another woman on the other end of that,
yeah,
And
yeah,
so I think,
100%.
you know what I'm saying? And I think that like I've never like personally I've never been fearful of women. I've never been fearful to now,
Same.
have there been scenarios where I'm like, I don't think she's my friend. I don't think she like me.
Yeah,
But of course, and I don't expect to be liked by everybody, but
yeah,
I do think that even the people that I don't think like me, if I was like, hey, I got a question for you,
yeah,
they would answer it.
yeah,
So I don't
yeah,
have the fear of looking dumb.
yeah,
You know? I People
yeah,
sometimes don't want to go through the process to learn what they need to learn because they're afraid of asking for help. And I think
yeah,
that is a huge, huge aspect of the difference between good to great, great to excellent,
yeah,
and also how we can actually empower ourselves. If we keep thinking that we're competing with one another
100%.
versus collaborating and being of service to one another, then that stigma will always exist.
100%. And it's so silly that our brain tricks us and fear tricks us to think it's smarter to ask a machine than a human. I mean, look, Google AI, it's all brilliant. It's all great. Go ask Google all day long. We all do it. But why do we think that that is okay and we don't get fearful of that? Yet asking another human that has real experiences and can put a narrative and a story that a machine will never be able to put to that scenario, why do we think that is so scary?
Mm.
Why? Why are we so scared of that? But All really good food for thought, and probably more about therapy sessions at this point than business advice. But it's all good because, to your point, it's all the harmony of work and life, and it's combined. Be sure to subscribe to ASD Market Week's Let's Talk a Little Shop, a podcast that can be found on iTunes, Google Play, Amazon, or Spotify. See you there.